If you've ever felt the sting of humiliation in a room full of people who are supposed to love you, you'll understand why I'll never forget the night of my 5th wedding anniversary. It was supposed to be a celebration, a night of laughter, music, and memories. Instead, it became the night I realized just how alone you can feel, even when you're surrounded by 600 smiling faces. Before I share what happened, I want to thank you for being here. If you find this story meaningful or relatable, please take a moment to like and subscribe. It really helps this channel grow and lets me share more real stories like this. And let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel and how many of us are connected by experiences like these. Now let me take you back to that night, when everything I thought I knew about my marriage, my in-laws, and even myself was about to change. The ballroom was breathtaking. Crystal chandeliers, white roses on every table, a string quartet playing softly in the corner. My husband, Daniel, had spared no expense. He wanted everyone to know how much he loved me, or at least that's what he said. But as the guests arrived, I started to notice the little things, the way his mother, Evelyn, looked me up and down, her lips pursed in disapproval. The way his father, Charles, barely acknowledged me, too busy shaking hands with business partners and old friends. I tried to brush it off. I told myself it was just nerves, that tonight would be different. But as the evening went on, the comments started. Small at first, almost easy to ignore. Evelyn leaned in as I greeted her, her voice low but sharp. "That dress is bold. I suppose it's true what they say about girls from your side of town." She smiled, but her eyes were cold. Charles joined in, clapping Daniel on the back. "You've done well for yourself, son. Not everyone can turn a rough diamond into something presentable." Their friends laughed, and I forced a smile, my cheeks burning. I glanced at Daniel, hoping for support. But he just shrugged as if to say, "What can you do?" I tried to focus on the good, the friends who hugged me, the cousins who danced with me, the way the lights sparkled on the cake Daniel had ordered just for me. But every time I started to relax, another comment would come. "Did you see the way she ate her salad?" One of Daniel's aunts whispered, not quietly enough. "No manners at all." "I heard her father's in construction," another guest said, as if it were a crime. "No wonder she's so practical." I kept my head high, refusing to let them see how much it hurt. I'd learned long ago that showing weakness only made things worse, but inside I was crumbling. The worst part was Daniel. He didn't defend me. He didn't pull me aside to check if I was okay. He just laughed along, letting the jokes pile up, letting his family's words chip away at me piece by piece. Dinner turned into speeches. Daniel's father stood up first, raising his glass. "To my son and his resourceful wife. May she always remember where she came from, and may Daniel always remember how far he's brought her." Laughter, applause. I stared at my plate, willing myself not to cry. Then Evelyn took the microphone. I must admit, when Daniel brought her home, I was surprised. "But she's grown on us, hasn't she?" She looked around the room, waiting for agreement. "Like a weed in a rose garden." More laughter. I felt my hands shaking under the table. Finally, Daniel stood. He smiled at me, but there was something in his eyes I didn't recognize. "My wife is one of a kind," he said. "She's taught me patience, humility, and how to survive on a budget." He winked at the crowd. "Seriously, you should see her coupon collection." The room erupted. 600 people laughing at me, at my life, at the things I'd worked so hard to overcome. I felt the tears rising, but I swallowed them down. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction. I looked at Daniel, hoping for a sign, anything to show he understood how much this hurt. But he just grinned, basking in the attention. That's when something inside me snapped. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. The room fell silent, all eyes on me. I took a deep breath, my voice steady. "Thank you all for your kind words. It's clear I'll never be good enough for some of you, but I know who I am and I know where I come from. And I'd rather be a weed in a rose garden than a rose with no roots." There was a stunned silence, then a few scattered claps. But Daniel's face darkened. He turned to the crowd, his voice cold. "See what I have to deal with? Always so dramatic. The laughter started again, louder this time. I felt the tears spill over, hot and humiliating. I turned away, fumbling for my phone. My hands shook as I dialed the only number I knew would bring me comfort. "Dad, please come." I slipped out of the ballroom, the laughter echoing behind me like a cruel soundtrack. My heels clicked down the marble hallway, each step heavier than the last. I pressed my phone to my ear, desperate for my father's voice, for any reminder that I wasn't as alone as I felt in that moment. The call rang twice before he answered, his voice warm and steady, the way it always was when I needed him most. "Sweetheart? Are you all right?" I tried to answer, but my throat tightened. I swallowed hard, forcing the words out. "Dad, can you come get me? Please, I can't stay here." He didn't ask questions. He never did when I sounded like this. "I'm on my way. Stay where you are." I hung up, leaning against the cool wall, trying to steady my breathing. I could still hear the music drifting from the ballroom, the muffled sound of glasses clinking, people dancing, my husband's laughter blending with his family's. I wondered if anyone even noticed. I was gone. A few minutes later, I heard footsteps. I braced myself, expecting Daniel or maybe his mother, ready for another round of humiliation. But it was my cousin, Lily, her face tight with worry. "I saw you leave," she whispered, glancing over her shoulder. "Are you okay?" I shook my head, unable to speak. She wrapped her arms around me, holding me tight. "They don't deserve you," she said fiercely. "None of them do." I wanted to believe her, but the words from inside still rang in my ears. I pulled away, wiping my eyes. "Thank you for coming out. I just need some air." She nodded, squeezing my hand before slipping back inside. I was grateful for her kindness, but I needed more than comfort. I needed escape. I waited in the lobby, watching the minutes tick by. Every time the elevator doors opened, I tensed, half expecting Daniel to come storming out, demanding an explanation or worse, telling me to come back and play the dutiful wife. But he didn't come. No one did. Finally, headlights swept across the glass doors. My father's old truck pulled up to the curb, a familiar sight that made my heart ache with relief. He stepped out, his suit a little wrinkled, his hair grayer than I remembered, but his eyes were the same, kind, steady, full of love. He opened the passenger door and I slid in, the scent of his aftershave wrapping around me like a blanket. For a moment, neither of us spoke. He just reached over and squeezed my hand. "Want to talk about it?" he asked gently. I shook my head, staring out the window as the city lights blurred past. "Not yet." He nodded, understanding. We drove in silence, the kind that feels safe, not awkward. I watched the world outside. The fancy cars, the glittering buildings, all the things Daniel's family cared about so much. I wondered when I'd started caring too. When we reached my parents' house, my mom was waiting at the door, worry etched into her face. She pulled me into a hug, whispering, "You're safe now. You're home." I let myself cry then, really cry, the kind of tears that leave you empty and exhausted. My parents sat with me, listening as I finally told them everything. The comments, the laughter, the way Daniel had turned on me in front of everyone. My father's jaw tightened, but he didn't interrupt. My mother just held my hand, her thumb tracing circles on my skin. When I finished, my father spoke. "You don't have to go back there. Not tonight. Not ever if you don't want to." I shook my head. "I can't just leave. It's my marriage. I have to try, don't I?" He looked at me, his eyes gentle but firm. "You have to do what's right for you. Not for Daniel, not for his family, not for anyone else. For you." I lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of the gala. I thought about the way Daniel had looked at me, not with love or concern, but with annoyance, as if I were an inconvenience. I thought about the laughter, the way it had felt like knives in my skin. I wondered if I'd ever really belonged in his world, or if I'd just been pretending all along. The next morning, my phone buzzed with messages, some from friends who'd seen what happened and wanted to check on me, others from Daniel's family, demanding to know why I'd made a scene. Daniel himself sent a single text. "We need to talk." I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. I knew I couldn't avoid him forever. I needed answers. I needed to know if there was anything left to save. I agreed to meet him at a cafe near our apartment, a neutral place where I could leave if things got bad. When I arrived, he was already there, looking tired and rumpled, a far cry from the polished man at the gala. He stood when he saw me, but I didn't hug him. I sat down, folding my hands in my lap. He started talking before I could say a word. "I'm sorry about last night. I didn't mean for things to get out of hand." I waited, searching his face for sincerity. "You didn't defend me, Daniel. You laughed with them. You made me the joke." He looked away, shame flickering across his features. I didn't want to make a scene. My parents, they expect—" I cut him off. "What about what I expect? What about what I need?" He was silent, and in that silence, I realized something important. I'd spent so long trying to fit into his world that I'd forgotten what it felt like to stand in my own. I watched Daniel struggle for words, but for once I didn't rush to fill the silence. I let it hang between us, heavy and honest. He finally looked up, his eyes tired. "I know I should have stood up for you. I know I let you down, but you have to understand my family. They're complicated. They expect things to be a certain way." I shook my head, feeling a strange calm settle over me. "Your family isn't complicated, Daniel. They're cruel. And last night you chose them over me. You let them tear me down and then you joined in. I can't forget that." He reached for my hand, but I pulled it away. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I just wanted everyone to get along." I almost laughed, but there was no humor left in me. "You wanted everyone to get along, but you never cared if I was okay. You never cared if I was happy. You just wanted me to fit into their world, no matter how much it hurt." He looked away, his shoulders slumping. "What do you want me to do?" I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of my decision. "I want you to think about what kind of husband you want to be. Not for your parents, not for their friends, but for me. For us. Because I can't keep pretending everything is fine when it's not." He nodded, but I could see he didn't really understand. Maybe he never would. I stood up, gathering my things. "I'm going to stay with my parents for a while. I need space. I need to remember who I am without all of this noise." He didn't try to stop me. He just watched as I walked away, his face a mix of regret and confusion. Back at my parents' house, I felt lighter. I spent the next few days rediscovering the parts of myself I'd buried to make Daniel's family happy. I cooked with my mom, laughed with my dad, took long walks in the park where I used to dream about my future. For the first time in years, I felt like myself again. One evening, as we sat around the dinner table, my dad looked at me and smiled. "You know, I've never been prouder of you than I was that night. It takes courage to stand up for yourself, especially when it feels like the whole world is against you." I smiled back, feeling his words settle deep in my heart. "I just wish it hadn't taken me so long." He squeezed my hand. "Sometimes the hardest lessons are the ones we need most." A week later, Daniel showed up at my parents' door. He looked different, less polished, more real. He asked if we could talk, and I agreed, but only if my parents could be there too. He sat down, his hands shaking. "I've been doing a lot of thinking. I talked to my parents. I told them what they did was wrong. I told them I wouldn't let them treat you that way again." I listened, searching his face for the truth. "And what about you, Daniel? What are you going to do differently?" He took a deep breath. "I'm going to start putting you first. I'm going to start standing up for you, even if it means standing up to them. I don't want to lose you." For the first time, I saw real fear in his eyes, the fear of losing something that mattered. I nodded slowly. "It's going to take time. I need to see that you mean it, not just hear the words." He agreed, and for the first time, I felt a glimmer of hope. We took things slow after that. Daniel started coming to family dinners at my parents' house, learning what it meant to be part of a family that loved without conditions. He apologized, not just to me, but to my parents, to Lily, even to himself. It wasn't easy. There were setbacks, moments when old habits crept back in. But each time I stood my ground. remembering the strength I'd found that night in the ballroom. Months later, on our anniversary, Daniel surprised me with a small dinner. Just the two of us. No speeches, no audience, just honesty. He looked at me across the table, his eyes full of gratitude. "Thank you for not giving up on me," he said softly. I smiled, reaching for his hand. "Thank you for finally seeing me." And in that moment, I knew I'd never let anyone make me feel small again. Not Daniel, not his family, not anyone. Because I'd learned that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is speak up, even if your voice shakes, even if you stand alone.